just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
You like when you are called the People's Pope?
El Papa de la gente.
Can you help negotiate peace?
Join us for our special hour with His Holiness on CBS.
Pope Francis I, tonight on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Trump attorney Michael Cohen took the stand again this morning, where he faced additional cross-examination.
He's pissing a lot of people off right now with what's going on with the genocide in Palestine.
I'm not endorsing every single thing that Viktor Orban has ever done. I don't know everything he's ever done. What I do think is on the university principle, the idea that taxpayers should have some influence in how their money is spent at these universities, it's a totally reasonable thing.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. From the campaign trail to the New York criminal courtroom. Michael Cohen wrapped up his Trump testimony today, while over the weekend, President Biden and former President Trump both made campaign appeals to black voters.
Because of your vote, it's the only reason I'm standing here as President of the United States of America, period.
We're doing record numbers with the African-American voters.
With that first debate scheduled for just a little over a month from now, we've got new CBS News polling that's offering a warning to the Biden campaign in Arizona and Florida. CBS News pollster Anthony Salvanto will join us ahead with those new numbers. Our Aaron Navarro is also in Detroit tonight with more on President Biden's campaign. But for now, we'll start with our Errol Barnett, who's outside the Trump criminal courtroom in Lower Manhattan. Errol, good to see you. So we understand that there was some big moments at the end of the day today. The courtroom was apparently cleared out momentarily during a particularly tense exchange. Tell us what happened.
Hey there, CHB. Always great to see you. Yes, today ends with real friction in the courtroom between the judge and one of the defense's first witnesses in Robert Costello. Now, Michael Cohen has concluded his testimony. The prosecution has rested their case, but the defense now has the opportunity to bring forward witnesses to poke holes in Cohen's credibility. Robert Costello is a Trump-linked lawyer who had contact with Cohen in 2018, around the time Cohen was being investigated by the FBI for his role in the so-called hush money scheme. And while initially the judge wasn't aware that this would be called as a witness because Costello wasn't on the initial witness list, the defense wanted to wait and see what Cohen would say before bringing him forward. So the judge had to first take time to decide if he could testify. He then said Costello could testify, but only under a limited scope. And so when the defense was asking him questions, the prosecution would object, and Costello would continue to give his answer. This happened again and again. At certain points, he made noises and kind of, sucked his teeth at these objections, and himself saying, go ahead and strike what I said. The judge then cleared the jury out of the courtroom and said to this witness, if you don't like my ruling, you don't say geez, you don't say strike it. I am the only one who can strike testimony in court. If you don't like my ruling, you don't give me side eye and you don't roll your eyes. Do you understand that? The judge raises his voice. Do you understand that? At which point the witness then stared the judge down. At that point, Judge Merchant said, clear the courtroom. Reporters in there and the general public had to leave before likely he dressed down the witness again before calling everyone back in and continuing testimony. It's never a good look when a jury sees that type of tension between the judge and a witness, and it likely muddies this witness testimony as the defense tries to poke holes in everything that Michael Cohen has laid out. So the day not ending without some quite dramatic moments that legal experts say they've really not seen anything like it.
Yeah, Errol, that's fascinating. And as we say time and time again on this show, we don't have video in the courtroom. It's not allowed. So having your recollection, your retelling of what happened in there is so critical. I do want to ask about Michael Cohen. The prosecution, of course, rested today after his testimony wrapped up. He's, of course, Trump's former lawyer, kind of a central witness in this case. What did he reveal on the stand today?
Well, Cohen's testimony has essentially tied Donald Trump directly to, first, the instruction and the scheme to pay off Stormy Daniels with $130,000 so she wouldn't publicize her story of the alleged sexual encounter before the 2016 election. And Cohen then also laid out the scheme after the 2016 election by Donald Trump and his associates in the White House to pay Cohen back. Those repayments of the 34 felony counts, that's what it's all based on. And so the defense tried to poke holes in his motivations, his admissions of theft and guilt previously, so that it waters down his position. Closing arguments could take place just after Memorial Day weekend, Tuesday of next week. So we are now in the final home stretch, and it just depends on what these 12 jurors think of everything they've seen and heard so far.
A trial unlike any other, potentially winding down soon. Errol Barnett outside the courthouse for us. We appreciate it. Thank you. And President Biden made his pitch to black voters in the battleground states of Georgia and Michigan over the weekend. During his commencement address at Morehouse, which is a historically black college, the president said that his heart, quote, is broken over Gaza. Aaron Navarro joins us now from Detroit covering the Biden campaign there. Aaron, good to see you. So a lot of campaign activity for Biden over the weekend as well. How did he approach reaching out to this key voting bloc? We know it's essential. We know he's not he's potentially losing some support.
Hi, Kaylin. Good to be with you. That's right. These were two big speeches and two big battlegrounds in front of two large, predominantly black audiences where Biden made overtures. Let's start with Morehouse College, where he gave the commencement on Sunday morning. He started with scripture, kind of invoking the creation of Morehouse to start. Then went into the topic of democracy. He often returned to this phrase, what is democracy if? And he would say, what is democracy if black people are killed on the street, if promises made to the black community are not fulfilled? Again, making those overtures specific to this Morehouse crowd. And then last night, I was here in Detroit for the NAACP dinner that Biden spoke at, where he really leaned into some contrast between himself and former President Trump. He noted how he appointed the first black woman to the Supreme Court, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and asked the crowd, if Trump is reelected for a second term, he hopes that he appoints someone to the Supreme Court that at least has a brain. And this next line got a lot of reaction from the crowd. He asked the crowd there at the NAACP dinner, what would happen if it were black people that stormed the Capitol on January 6th? And a lot of the crowd kind of reacted to that, acknowledging that they think it might have been a different outcome, in particular from the response from law enforcement, were that the case.
Yeah, Aaron, it's interesting because this visit to Morehouse, for example, was a way to, highlight a key constituency in a key battleground state. But as is the case in pretty much everything that the president wants to do, he's facing protests over the Israel-Hamas war. Now, it wasn't as, explosive as some may have thought in terms of the protests going in. But talking to black voters, as you have over the weekend, how are they assessing the administration's handling of this?
Well, it's definitely on their mind. And, leading up to the commencement at Morehouse, we would see in college graduation ceremony after ceremony, protesters either interrupting or disrupting the program. So that was the question hanging over Biden's commencement address in Morehouse. Would the same happen there? And as you noted, it wasn't as big of a protest. It was more of a quiet way to do things, people turning their chairs, facing their backs towards Biden. But this issue of Gaza and Israel still was prevalent on a lot of the voters' minds I talked to in both Georgia and Michigan. Take a listen to one voter I talked to who's going to vote for Biden in November, but had some concerns.
Biden has done some good things, but right now he's pissing a lot of people off right now with what's going on with the genocide in Palestine. I kind of feel the same way. I don't think we should be killing people.
Right. So from talking to other voters in Detroit, they believe that the issue of Gaza is important for voters to keep in mind when they head to the booths in November, but they did not think it's a make or break issue for black voters.
All right, interesting. We will keep an eye on that for sure. Aaron Navarro on the campaign trail for us. Thank you so much. And Iranian state media is reporting the country will hold new national elections on June 28th. It follows the death of Iranian President Raisi, the country's foreign minister, and several other officials in a helicopter crash. The chopper went down in foggy conditions in the mountainous northwestern part of the country on Sunday. The deaths leave Iran without two influential leaders as the isolated country faces international tension and domestic discontent. The State Department expressed its official condolences for the deaths and reaffirmed its support for the Iranian people and their, quote, struggle for human rights and fundamental freedoms. President Biden is calling the International Criminal Court's decision to seek arrest warrants for top Israeli officials as, quote, outrageous. The court's chief prosecutor says he's seeking arrest warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and 3 Hamas leaders. The warrants are a result of a months-long investigation into the October 7th attack and Israel's military response. A panel of ICC judges will now consider the application for the arrest warrants. And it's shaping up to be one of the most competitive races in the country. Former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers is looking to return to Washington, and the one-time Trump critic now has the former president in his corner. We'll speak to him about the race next on America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Former Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers is hoping to return to Capitol Hill. The Republican is looking to replace Senator Debbie Stabenow in the Senate and has the backing of former President Trump. So let's bring in Senate candidate Mike Rogers. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks for being here. This is a blockbuster Senate race in a blockbuster battleground state for the presidency. So a lot is riding on this, it looks like. But I want to talk to you about your race because you have been an outspoken critic against Donald Trump in the past. I mean, last year here on Face the Nation, you said that you think people are, quote, tired of the chaos and ready for a calm and steady helm. But in running for the Senate, of course, you have endorsed the former president and he has endorsed you. So what has changed?
Well, first of all, primary squabble, and we are well into this election cycle. And the most important thing that I think people are going to have to make up their minds, I certainly did, who is better prepared to close the border and stop the chaos? Who is better prepared to do something about the cost of groceries and gasoline, food, eggs, bread? I mean, who's going to do something about electric vehicle mandates that are actually killing the labor community here in the great state of Michigan, and by the way, impacting families in a very negative way here. So when you look at those big, weighty issues, to me, there isn't much of a debate on this. And we are looking to the future. How are we going to turn this around in a timely way so that people don't have to take out a mortgage to buy eggs and bread?
And Congressman, I mean, your seat is critical for Republicans who are hoping to gain the majority in the Senate. Do you think that Trump is a help or is he a hindrance to down ballot races like yours?
I think he's a help. He's up in the state of Michigan. And what I think people don't understand is around the country when they look at a state like Michigan, we're a hardworking place. We are people who get up every day and go to work. We take care of our kids and put them on the bus. And guess what? The rules of the game feel rigged for people like that. They are not doing as well as they were in the past. $1,000 more per month in inflation tax right on their family budget. Matter of fact, I argue in Michigan, the most expensive vehicle to operate in 2024 is your shopping cart. And we have just story after story. I was talking to a clerk the other day who said her worst day isn't when the cart comes in skinny. It's when people have to reach up on the conveyor belt, take it off, and put it back in the cart after they ring it up. Because groceries are still getting more expensive. And so those are the kinds of issues, and that's why people are moved. Trump was never ahead in the state of Michigan in 2016 when he won. He's ahead in the state of Michigan today. Again, labor, our Black communities around the state are starting to ask hard questions. Our schools are failing. Our job opportunities are gone. Our incomes are down. Our 401ks are down. Something's not working. And that is an opportunity for us to talk about hope and future and all those other things that we are doing in the state. That's why I think Donald Trump being in the state, coming back, talking the way he does, that triggers some people to get excited about this race. That's all good for the state, and it's really going to be good for people's pocketbooks come 2025.
I want to ask you about the election itself, because we have had some prominent Republicans who aren't committing to accepting the results of the election in November. Here's Florida Senator Marco Rubio over the weekend for an example.
Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter what happens, Senator?
No matter what happens? No, if it's an unfair election, I think it's going to be contested by either side.
Senator, no matter who wins.
I think you're asking the wrong person. The Democrats are the ones that have opposed every Republican victory since 2000, every single one.
What do you think this says about the state of the Republican Party right now? And also, will you accept the results of the election?
So I think looking back right now is really not helpful to anybody. What we have to do in order to win, and I know this, I ran and won the closest congressional race in the country the year that I won. I won by 111 votes. And here's how you do it. You look forward, you talk to people, you build ballot integrity operations. We're doing that all over the state to try to keep honest folks honest. And we are building a volunteer base. We think we're going to hit 15,000 volunteers by October. They're going to go door to door. They're talking to people. They're talking about issues that matter to them. Trust me when I say this, Caitlin, people are hurting financially. Our food banks are overflowing with people showing up of all demographics, all economic status. You would be surprised. It's hard. And so what we're trying to do is talk about things that are going to get to the next place. And one way we do that, we know, turn out voters who want to make a difference, turn out voters who are going to vote their pocketbooks, and turn out voters who are going to vote their values in this state going forward. And we're going to win. That's how we're going to win.
And just to be clear, though, given all those efforts you described, you would commit to supporting the results, whatever the outcome?
Listen, I'm going to support who wins an election fairly. Absolutely, I'll do that. And one way we're going to make sure that happens is we're going to build out our own election integrity army here in the state of Michigan to make sure that happens.
And I want to ask about a specific issue in Michigan, a national issue, but resonating particularly in Michigan, and that's the administration's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. Your Senate primaries in August, but some Democrats in your state are urging voters to vote uncommitted in the Democratic primary, obviously in opposition to the administration. How do you see this issue playing out? And do you think that this is an issue that will help Republicans in Michigan this November?
Well, it certainly gives Republicans an opportunity to have conversations with our Arab American and Muslim community in Michigan. Absolutely. We find that there are so many issues, their businesses, their education, their future possibilities here in the state that line up with Republicans. And listen, the Muslim community has a saying, at least around Dearborn, that says, "Hey, if better to be stabbed in the face than the back." And I meet with them, and I've talked with them, and they feel that the Biden administration and Democrats have stabbed them in the back. And so this gives us, as Republicans, and I'm a pro-Israel guy, but we can now have conversations that weren't open to us before. And I'm having those conversations, and we're finding very fertile ground in these people willing to have conversations with us. I think that's going to hurt Democrats. I think the UAW Auto Worker Coalition is starting to fall apart for Democrats. Black males in Southeast Michigan starting to drift away from the Democrat Party. All of those spell trouble for the Democrats. And remember, if just 10% of the 113,000 Arab Americans who went down to the poll on a cold February day in Michigan and voted uncommitted, that's intensity, by the way. If just 10% do that and live up to the fact that they're just not going to vote, that's a higher margin than Trump won Michigan in 2016. They have trouble. That's why this race is competitive. That's why we're having real conversations with every coalition in Michigan about how life is going to get better financially, for your kids' education, for a secure border, and for crime going forward. Those choices are very, very clear.
All right. Well, Congressman Mike Rogers, thank you for being here. As I said, this is a big race, so we will certainly be talking in the future and paying attention to this one. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks, Caitlin. Hope to see you again soon.
We go on day after day, and I tell Iowa, I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it. I tell New Hampshire, sorry, I won't be able to make it. I'm sitting in an icebox all day.
Former President Trump made a couple of key campaign stops over the weekend. We'll check in on those trips and the latest from the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. That's next on America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Donald Trump returned to a New York courthouse today for his criminal hush money trial following a busy weekend on the campaign trail. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee appeared in Dallas for the National Rifle Association's annual convention on Saturday, and he delivered remarks while accepting the NRA's endorsement. Trump appeared also in St. Paul, Minnesota, one day earlier. The former president headlined the state's Republican Party annual Lincoln Reagan Day dinner, which coincided with its convention. Robert Costa is outside the courthouse in New York City for us tonight. Robert, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. So we talk a lot about the courtroom versus the campaign trail. This past weekend, Trump was able to spend a lot of time on the campaign trail. What's the significance of these two appearances, first in Minnesota and also at the NRA convention?
For Trump allies, it's an effort to make sure that the campaign appears to be conducting business as usual, even though Trump is paying an enormous cost in terms of his time with this trial here in Lower Manhattan. He is making it to these different stops around the country. And different Trump associates point to recent CBS News polling where they show many voters are caring about the economy, not necessarily Trump's conduct when it comes to deciding their vote, at least at this point in the campaign. Though many Democratic sources tell me the debates with President Biden will be an opportunity for him to bring other issues to the fore, including Trump's conduct and character from these trials and the looming federal trials, as well as abortion rights and the issue of democracy.
Yeah, and Bob, speaking of the trial, the prosecution rested its case today after Michael Cohen appeared for his 4th and final time on the stand. What did Cohen have to say? What's the significance there?
Michael Cohen at times was emotional, and it was at times also contentious with Trump lawyer Todd Blanche. Blanche raised serious doubts about Cohen's credibility as the crucial witness for the prosecution. In fact, earlier in the day, Cohen acknowledged that he committed the act of theft. He stole money from the Trump organization in terms of how he sought reimbursements at one point in the past decade. And that was an attempt by the defense team to really look at Cohen and say to the jury, maybe this is not the most credible person. But at the end of the day, the prosecution believes that Cohen remains credible because he points to documentation and different phone calls that link Trump to the hush money payments in their view. And that fact, more than any questions about Cohen himself, looms over how the prosecution sees this case.
And so now the prosecution is resting, Bob, but the biggest question I think a lot of people still have is there any possibility at all that Trump would actually testify before the trial comes to a close?
It's always been a possibility. Just a few weeks ago, when I was at Mar-a-Lago, I asked former President Trump, are you willing to testify? And he said, yes, I am. I'm happy to take the stand. He has not taken the stand so far. And sources close to the legal team tell me that there's no need for Trump to take the stand at this point in the trial, that they were waiting to see how it unfolded. And because they feel like they're in a bit of a favorable position in the sense that Cohen's credibility has been questioned, there's no need for Trump to sit there under oath and talk about this case through the lens of his own narrative. At the same time, Trump always wants the final word, so Todd Blanche, the lead attorney, has not ruled anything out. But at this point, which is always fluid in Trump orbit, at this point, Trump will not take the stand from what I hear. He will let his defense team continue to call some expert witnesses to the stand to wrap up their case, but not call Trump himself.
Very interesting. A court case potentially winding down. And Bob Costa, you've been covering it from the very beginning outside that courthouse. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. And most of the 18 people charged in Arizona's fake electors case will be arraigned tomorrow. Rudy Giuliani was the final defendant served an indictment. A spokesperson for the former New York City mayor says that he was served while walking to his car after celebrating his 80th birthday. He was reportedly, quote, unfazed and is looking forward to, quote, his full vindication. Giuliani and 17 other defendants have been indicted in Arizona over their alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The state attorney general's office says Giuliani is facing charges including conspiracy, fraud, and forgery. President Biden and Donald Trump were on the campaign trail this weekend. What the latest CBS News polling reveals about their support in two key battlegrounds. Our CBS News pollster Anthony Salvanto is standing by with a look at the numbers. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go. You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
The clock, it's ticking. Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Arizona and Florida have both been in the national spotlight over abortion rights in recent weeks, but a CBS News poll finds other issues are more pressing for voters in those states. In the Grand Canyon state, the economy tops the list as Biden trails there by about 5 points. A majority of voters in Arizona also said the border was a major factor in their vote for president. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Good to see you, Anthony. Thanks for being here. So this has been a question that I've been wondering for the past several months now, because we know that in every instance that abortion rights have been on the ballot in states, it's passed. But this is different because we're in an election year. We haven't seen this yet. So I'm curious kind of how this has been weighing on Biden in Arizona.
Well, I'll tell you, Caitlin, you saw those two numbers you said at the top, Florida and Arizona. Some folks thought maybe Florida could come into play if the abortion rights side of things spurred maybe more turnout, maybe people voting for that in Joe Biden. But so far, it's really about the economy. And then the other thing is in Arizona here, let me show you this, because immigration is really a bigger factor right now. And I'm going to start with this, because it's not just about Joe Biden's policies, which a lot of voters tell us they think is too easy on migrants crossing the border. But look at how this breaks down with when you ask people, have immigrants to Arizona made life better, worse, no impact? You get a majority who now say that it's making life worse, and that's up from the summer of 2020. So there's been a change in perception there. I would also point out that while it's more split, it is split among Hispanic voters in particular. And what you're seeing there is the impact of inflation, of affordability. And I would add this, it's not just immigrants, but mind you, it's also a lot about growth. People who say that they think people from the U.S. moving into Arizona have also made life more difficult, made life worse there. And that's a majority, too. And that speaks, again, to the idea of things becoming harder to afford there in Arizona. Caitlin.
I mean, Anthony, there's so much going on in Arizona this time around, and it also was kind of the center for election denialism over the past few years after the last election there. We all remember those images. I know you asked voters about this looking ahead to November. What did we see about potentially challenging the results?
Well, I asked this because, as you say, Arizona was at the center of a lot of things, but also because we've consistently seen over these years so many Republicans who continue to believe Donald Trump's false claims, right, that the election was rigged, as he says. Well, take a look at this. A priori, going into this, we asked, well, what should happen after the results are counted this year? And you get Donald Trump's voters who are split, with 47% saying that the results should be challenged if Joe Biden wins. Joe Biden's voters don't feel that way, but half of Donald Trump's voters do. And that has real implications for democracy if people in advance are not trusting the election system, Caitlin.
Absolutely, and we are following all of that in other states as well. Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And to discuss all of this, let's bring in our political panel, Megan Hayes and Matt Gorman. Megan previously served in the Biden administration as the White House Director of Message Planning, and Matt is a Republican strategist who served as a senior advisor to Senator Tim Scott's presidential campaign. Megan and Matt on Mondays is what I'm calling this segment. Thank you both for being here. Let's start with those numbers Anthony just mentioned. 47% of Trump voters saying that they are wanting to challenge the results if he doesn't win. Matt, I mean, we've been hearing Republican lawmakers, prominent Republicans being asked about accepting the results of this election. What do those numbers say to you?
Honestly, not very much, because what I was looking more at was at the first part of this panel when he was talking about the issue set and how the economy, immigration is playing in the minds of voters. Right now, it's looking more and more likely that they won't have to worry about that because Trump, as of today, is looking like he's going to win. And what also struck me was the majority of those issue sets that he talked about that are above 50% in voters' minds, 4 of those 3 traditionally benefit Republicans: immigration, crime, the economy. You know, what's rapidly happening is, as we've said before, abortion is becoming a single issue, animating issue these past couple election cycles. Does immigration now at least match that or take some of the momentum away from that as an animating issue for voters.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I mean that's the biggest question I've had is whether this issue can convert voters to Biden's side. I mean, obviously, you both know better than anyone that voters have the capacity to think about multiple things at the same time. But Megan, for you, I mean, looking at these numbers in Arizona, the idea that abortion, at least at this point, given that it's on the ballot there, isn't moving the needle to the extent that I'm sure Biden would like.
I think you're right. I think we're also 6 months away. I think people aren't paying attention. I think that Biden needs to capitalize on these Haley voters that are in the suburbs who are also going to be voting on abortion over immigration. But they're also the same folks that are worried about the economy. So there needs to be things done to improve the economy if I think that the president's going to move Arizona back in to keep Arizona in his favor.
I mean, another big race in Arizona is the Senate race. So Arizona could help determine the presidency. It could also help determine who has control of the Senate. Biden is behind by 5 points in Arizona, but Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, is ahead by several points ahead of Carrie Lake. I mean, Matt, as Republicans, I mean, you know these races well. As Republicans are looking at that, what's the concern there?
As a trend, it looks like Biden is running considerably weaker than many of other Senate candidates across the country. What we're seeing in Arizona, candidly, isn't necessarily isolated Arizona. You're seeing this with Biden losing in Pennsylvania, but Bob Casey winning. In Wisconsin, same thing with Tammy Baldwin and others. So, look, there is to be a lag. So in some ways, it might be even more concerning if you're Joe Biden, though. If you're the DSCC, all you need is one to lose, and you need to lose the Senate. So that, you know, Arizona could be gravy, but if they're losing Montana or Ohio, that's still a problem.
Yeah, West Virginia as well, likely to be Republican. I mean, Megan, is there any chance of like a reverse coattails for some of these?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think the DS and, the DNC as well is going to be putting more money in here into the Senate races, which also ultimately is going to help the top of the ticket. But I think that these issues like abortion are also going to help the Senate races because you saw Carrie Lake flip back and forth when the ruling came down a couple months ago. And so I do think that the more money that are in the states, the more it's going to drive. And I do think that will help Biden in the end.
I also want to ask about, obviously, I mean, it seems like every day the president, of course, is facing protests over his administration's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. We saw at Morehouse over the weekend, an event, of course, designed to drive black turnout, or speaking at events designed to. The protests weren't as explosive as we thought that they would be, but it is interesting, Megan, to me that it seems every time the president goes to talk about an issue, he is kind of overshadowed by this.
So, I mean, I worked for him for several years. We were protested at every single event. There are protesters on the motorcade route. There are people who protest at every event who have been protesting him for years. This issue is he's in a really tough spot here. He's in a no-win situation. He's trying to do a lot for Gaza as well as, holding firm to being an ally to Israel. So I do think he's in a tough spot in the policy. But also, I would call that 7 people turning their backs out of 470 while he spoke really a protest of any magnitude. You probably had more of that driving to the airport today in Wilmington.
Matt, I have to ask, because you worked for Tim Scott, he's been on the rounds doing interviews a lot, being asked about his potential as being a running mate. I believe we have some sound from him over the weekend.
I hear there's a debate in July. If you're the guy moderating, maybe I'll be talking to you. We'll see what happens.
All right, so we've seen Republicans kind of doing this open audition process for the former president. I mean, you saw this last time around too. How serious is this, do you think?
I think it's very, very serious, right? He'd be a great pick for VP. And look, I think we're speaking of the same sort of issue. African-American men are becoming a big battleground for both parties as we get in this. We went to a historically black men's college. Obviously, Tim Scott. I mean, watch 20% or so. If Trump gets above 20%, the African-American vote, that's very good shape for him. That unlocks places like Florida and other states. So whether it's Tim Scott or fighting over kind of the crowd at Morehouse College, speaking to the same thing, African-American men are going to be pivotal.
All right, Matt and Megan, thank you so much. We could talk forever about all of this, and we will at some point soon. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. We want to take you now quickly to the White House, where President Biden and Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff are delivering remarks in the Rose Garden to mark Jewish American Heritage Month. Let's listen in.
Compounding the pain and the vicious surge of anti-Semitism around the world, here in America as well, on our streets, our social media, and college campuses. It's amazing it's happening. It's absolutely despicable. It's wrong, and it must stop. It must stop. In America, we respect and protect fundamental rights of free speech to protest peacefully. That's America. But there's no place in any campus in America, any place in America for anti-Semitism, for hate speech that threatens violence of any kind against Jews or anyone else. Nobody should fear going to synagogue or school or walking down the street wearing a symbol of your faith. That's wrong, simply wrong. And that's why long before October 7th, I launched the nation's first national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. That's mobilizing the full force of the federal government to crack down on anti-Semitism wherever you find it. We recently secured an additional $400 million, the largest increase ever.
And you've been watching President Biden deliver remarks for Jewish American Heritage Month at the White House. He said Jewish Americans have proudly served the United States. The president also spoke about the impact of October 7th and how his administration is working around the clock to free hostages taken by Hamas. Former Republican Congressman Ken Buck called his last year on Capitol Hill his worst. From Donald Trump's hold on his party to the chaotic year on Capitol Hill, what this all means for the future of the Republican Party. We'll speak with the Colorado lawmaker about why he called it quits. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A Senate effort to revive a border security measure may go up for a vote this week, but the legislation was rejected by Republicans in the House earlier this year after former President Trump opposed it. It's been a lengthy back and forth, and it's just some of the recent chaos we've seen on Capitol Hill. Republican Colorado Congressman Ken Buck, who stepped down, in March, joins us now. Congressman, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. So you were still in Congress when this bipartisan border deal fell apart earlier this year. I know you're not there anymore, but is there any incentive for Republicans to reconsider at this point?
Well, I think there's a big incentive. I think Republicans want to make sure that we look like we are solving the problem. We want to make sure that the focus stays on the border. It has been a disaster for the Biden administration. Your last segment showing the poll numbers in Arizona is a great example of how much people care about what's happening at the border. I think that when you say that this bill is dead on arrival in the House, one way of trying to message that is to say that we will take this bill and try to improve it. But I think just walking away from an important issue like legislation that may pass the Senate is not a great idea.
You know, that is really interesting because I was wondering, especially given that new polling. I also want to speak about House Speaker Johnson. You supported him a while ago as well. He survived an effort to oust him earlier this year. But do you think that's the last of it, or do you think we'll see more challenges to him?
Well, it's hard to predict what somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to do. The political reality is there shouldn't be any attention on dysfunction in the House Republican conference. The attention that Republicans want right now is on the presidential race, the contrast between President Trump and President Biden, and not really changing the narrative, changing the focus of America at this point in time to how Republicans can't govern and continue to fight among themselves. So I hope that there is not another challenge to Speaker Johnson's tenure as Speaker this term, this congressional term in the House.
And I know you are not running again and you've already left Congress, but do you think having Donald Trump at the top of the ticket helps or is a hindrance to Republicans trying to expand the majority? I mean, it shrank when you left.
I think that you have to look at both candidates before you can say he's a help or a hindrance. I don't think either candidate is very popular with the American people. I think they're both dragging down their side. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few months to see who drags it down more, I guess.
And last year you told our Margaret Brennan that everyone who says the 2020 election was stolen is, quote, lying to America. Just this weekend we saw President Trump kind of reiterating those same claims. We have our CBS News polling that shows nearly half of Trump supporters would challenge the results if Trump loses. I'm curious what you make of that dynamic.
Well, I think the real issue is we have so many important things, so many important problems that we need to solve, and Republicans need to have credibility to solve those. And when we continue to lie about the election being stolen in 2020, we are undermining our credibility with the American people that we can solve those problems. And so I don't believe most Americans believe that the election was stolen. I don't think it helps Republicans to run on that issue. And we will lose in the long run if we continue to promote a false narrative.
All right, Ken Buck, former congressman. We hope now that you're out of office, you will join us as much as you can. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are just less than 6 months away from Election Day. Can you believe it? But will election officials accept the outcome? A new case in northern Michigan, is raising red flags. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We'll take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Are we going to be considered three-term or two-term? You tell me. Ronnie, what do you think? Are we three-term or two-term?
While the presumptive Republican nominee continues to falsely claim the 2020 election was stolen, a new CBS News investigation reveals that nearly 80 election deniers are overseeing voting in swing states. CBS News political investigative producer Madeline May joins us now. Madeline, good to see you. I know you and I were just reporting on this, our viewers might remember, last week from Nevada. But what kind of impact could these people have on elections in November?
So what we're seeing is a very organized effort of people who don't believe in the 2020 election results to oversee our local elections. So that's people who are on city councils or county commissions in charge of certifying the vote in many cases, who are looking to change the way that you and I cast our ballot or change the way those ballots are counted. So what we saw in our investigation is that in the case that somebody who's an election conspiracy theorist takes over one of those roles, it could change the way that the ballots are counted in November for that general presidential election.
And what's significant here is that this isn't necessarily just a hypothetical. I mean, you were reporting over the weekend in Michigan that this is kind of taking hold. What's happening there?
Right, so in Delta County, which is a very rural county in the Upper Peninsula, what we saw last week was that a very small county commission race, a board of canvassers actually refused to certify that race based off of pressure they got from an outside election integrity group. And this election integrity group espouses conspiracies about voting machines and voter rolls, what we've kind of come to expect from groups like this. And due to pressure that they've been exerting on this local government, they were able to prevent the certification of that race. I talked to the county clerk in that office, and she says she's very worried about the precedent that this will set for November.
And so, and this is an example of a very small county, a very small race that people may not have even considered or heard of. So there is this concern that you've been finding that take the presidential race, and this could easily be presented as something that could happen.
And there's only really 7 states that will dictate the outcome of the presidential race. And in each of those states, it's really these local elections that will determine the outcome in each of these states. So it's really important that we pay attention to places like Delta County in Michigan or Washoe County in Nevada, because it's these local elections that will determine the outcome of the national races. And if you have people in charge of those elections that are prone to election conspiracy, it could cast a lot of doubt. It could create a ton of disinformation and maybe even set up a situation that pretends to political violence.
Yeah, I mean, and just the casting of doubt is something that we've already seen the ripple effects of throughout the past 4 years. Madeline May, thank you very much for your reporting. We appreciate it. And some may think that working in government wouldn't be that exciting, but it turns out there's one agency where workers are having a blast. According to an annual Best Places to Work in the federal government survey, NASA tops the list. It's the 12th time in a row the space agency has held the #1 spot. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson celebrated the achievement, saying, "Once again, NASA has shown that the world's finest workforce, we can reach the stars." That does it for us today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
This is CBS.